And here we go. This is the Valley Noise Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Evans. We're going to be doing a college basketball podcast today. You can find us on Twitter if you'd like, at noise_valley. You can also find us on YouTube, Podbean, SoundCloud, and we'll be on Apple Podcasts in the near future as well. We're just going to dive right in. Recently, a couple days ago, news came out that Cole Anthony, North Carolina's point guard, was going to miss 4 to 6 weeks due to a knee procedure. A lot of people in the media are talking about how North Carolina is doomed. They just fell out of the rankings for the first time in a few years. They lost to Warford. And a lot of people are saying, well, this is it. This is the year that they finally, kind of fall back out of the tournament, fall back in the ACC standings. But I was kind of looking at their schedule, and honestly, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be pretty rough for a while. But they do have a good shot at still making the NCAA tournament. If other than their game today against Gonzaga, they really don't play a tough game for a while. They play UCLA next. Then they'll have home games against Yale, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, and Clemson. All very winnable games, even without Cole Anthony. They play on the road at Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech, which the Virginia Tech game will most likely be a loss. But assuming things could be a lot worse, North Carolina is in a decent spot. They do avoid, for whatever coincidence, they avoid Virginia, Duke, Louisville, and Florida State until February. And by that point, Cole Anthony should be back. So, things are looking on the bright side for North Carolina. If they could be a lot worse, a lot of teams are playing Virginia, Duke, those teams in the next month. And for whatever reason, North Carolina gets to avoid them until February. So they just have to tread water just for a little bit until he comes back. One big key, too, for North Carolina is getting sophomore small forward Leaky Black back. He missed Sunday's game against Wofford. If they can get him back very soon, he just has a sprained ankle, then they should be in a lot better of spot, especially over the next few weeks. When you miss Cole and him out in the same games, it gets very rough for North Carolina. They had to start a former walk-on point guard last game, and if they keep missing him for continued time, then things could be very rough for them. Moving on, we'll move on to the Big Ten. There's some exciting basketball being played in the Big Ten right now. Currently, all the teams in the Big Ten, or almost all of them, have played 1 or 2 games. So Michigan State leads right now in the conference, just with a 1-0 record. They're one of the few teams that only has played 1 conference game. But the rest of the conference is either 1-1 or a couple that are 0-1. A couple interesting stats for you. The home team so far in conference games is 13-0. And it's not just, the better teams playing at home. Nebraska beat Purdue recently, which was a pretty big win for them. They beat Purdue at home. It seems like a lot of the teams it's very evenly matched in conference play. And to be honest, the conference itself is very deep overall in the grand scheme of college basketball. There are 8 teams ranked in the top 35 according to NCAA's net rankings, and 5 of which are in the top 25. Michigan State kind of leads the pack in all of this, but Ohio State is legit. They just recently lost to Minnesota, but they have a chance to they play Kentucky and West Virginia their next 2 games. They have a chance to really make a statement to the rest of the country after they had already beaten North Carolina, who had Cole Anthony at the time. They're legit. Michigan State is obviously legit. And there's a few other teams that are kind of sneaky good. Penn State is firing up the rankings. They were ranked in the top 25 recently. Michigan, a lot of people know of Michigan because they won a tournament about a week ago. They kind of fell off the radar just a tad. They're now 8-3, but they're still ranked top 15. Juwan Howard's doing a very good job with them, and they're still a very tough out in conference play. Maryland, another team who's 10-1. They're doing very well. They're ranked 7th in the country right now. And then you got a bunch of flyer teams like Iowa, Indiana, already mentioned Nebraska, and Illinois, who all are very, very good. They Any of them could easily be a tournament team if they go on a run in the conference tournament. And they're definitely take some games off of some of these top tier teams in the conference. If you haven't been watching a whole lot of college basketball lately, there's one team that I think you should be watching without a doubt. That team is the Dayton Flyers. Dayton's currently ranked 13th in the country. They're 9-1. Their only loss coming to overtime against Kansas in the Maui Invitational, in which they led for most of the game. Very back and forth game. They even led by 3 with about 30 seconds left to play until Kansas forced overtime. They're very, very good. A couple things about their team. They're, in my opinion, the most pro-like college team. They run a lot of high ball screen. They shoot a lot of threes. They've only taken 16 mid-range jumpers in the half court compared to 137 at the rim and 179 threes. Obi Toppin is their best player. He's averaging 20 points, 8 rebounds. He can pretty much do it all. He can drive, shoot, defend. He's their best player by far. He's the guy that makes it all go. They space the floor really well, and they're really, really good offensively. They're a tough out for any team. They play Colorado coming up on the 21st, which would be an interesting game for them to play a Pac-12 team and a very, very capable Pac-12 team. Right now, they are shooting about 39% from 3. They spread it out, high ball screen, either get attacks at the rim or get good kickouts for threes. They even made Kansas go into a 2-3 zone because Kansas couldn't guard them, just to kind of slow down their offense. And they're, honestly, for me, this is one of the best teams to watch. Very exciting. They play super fast. They're scoring in the 80s to 90s almost every game. And they're one of those teams that I think really reminds me of some of the better Villanova teams in the last few years. Might not be as star-studded as those Villanova teams, but as far as system-wise, detail-wise, and just ability to shoot, they're right up there with those teams. Dayton only has a few teams that really you can kind of look at and compare to the rest of the country, but they did play St. Mary's, and they were blowing them out in the first half. They were up 21 at the half. St. Mary's made a little bit of a run in the second half, but Dayton still pulled it out and won by 10. Those two games are very telling to me because both Kansas and St. Mary's are very on the upper end of the echelon in the country, and then more towards kind of the better of the mid-majors. And they could have easily beat both of them. They beat St. Mary's. They could have definitely beat Kansas. And one thing that was very interesting to me was Kansas was getting a lot of good things from Azubuike in the down low. He was just dominating on the boards. He was dominating in the paint. But once Dayton just really kept spreading them out, spacing out the floor, playing super fast, it became kind of a mismatch for Kansas. One of the reasons why they had to go to zone. He swallowed up everything at the rim, but he couldn't guard that far out, and they really just played super up-tempo. And I'm very curious to see if they play any other teams in the tournament who have bigs that are very dominant but can't necessarily guard every guard out on switches and high ball screen. It'll be very telling. They also beat Georgia by 19. That was very early in the season when both teams only had a few games under their belts. Anthony Edwards didn't do very well in this game, but Dayton completely blew them out in both halves. They led 43-25 at first half, and then they played pretty much even in the second half and then ended up winning by 19. Like I said, this is one of those teams that I think, in my opinion, is one of the most exciting, most fun teams to watch. If you like scoring, if you like up-tempo, you're going to like this team. I think they're going to be a Sweet 16 team. Dayton's usually is pretty good. They're well coached. I think they have Sweet 16 as their floor for the tournament, I think honestly they have Elite Eight / Final Four as their ceiling as a team. If they shoot well or continue to shoot their norm, they will be a deep tournament team. That's all we got for today. Make sure you check them out. If you like some of the college basketball stuff that I'm planning on doing, feel free to let me know. You can follow me on Twitter at Mitchell A. Evans. Give our Twitter a follow at noise_valley. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be doing video soon as well for our podcast. We're all getting back together on Friday and Saturday, so we'll be releasing another pod for you. We got new equipment. We got a lot of big plans for this. So make sure to keep tuning in. Appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.